My name is Chuck Sturms, and this is an interview about my experiences in Vietnam and Cambodia in 1969-70. I was with the 1st Cavalry Company A-17, if I remember. This is 50 years ago, so about, and so my memory is, well, anyhow. We'll see what happens. The interview is taking place in Eugene, Oregon, and this is June 5th, 2015. I have 2 people working with me on this video, and they're going to introduce themselves. Okay?
I'm Beth Adelot, and I live in Eugene, Oregon. And I have known Chuck for how many years? A bunch. And this is, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, and I'm Hugh Massengill. I'm the videographer, and I'm also a Vietnam veteran.
I'd like to say thank you to my Iraqi, Afghani vets who were my students, who encouraged me to open this door. I basically remained silent about my Vietnam, Cambodia experiences for 40 years. And they saw in me some of the same things that they had in their experiences, and they encouraged me to go to the vets and work with the vets. And I'm been diagnosed as, a war veteran with PTSD, and so, but my students opened the door for me to explore these kinds of things, and one of the things coming out of this now is this video. So, I was born in Canton, Ohio, 1948, March 29th. My father was a factory worker. Mom was a homemaker. I have a sister, and a pretty normal upbringing. We were transplanted Appalachian farmers, and the farm didn't go well, and we moved to the city. My parents did, and that's where I was born, in Canton, Ohio. So my upbringing is very, very normal, very conservative. There was a war going on, which basically I didn't pay much attention to. Why would I? It's Vietnam. I didn't know where that was. Cambodia, never heard of it. I really had no experience of any kind going much anywhere. I was happy with living in Ohio. We didn't travel. My experiences then were pretty much provincial. I didn't go anywhere, and why would you? I was in engineering school after high school, and was not a very good student. And so I was drafted, and some of my friends said this was horrible, but for me it was a blessing. So I got drafted and didn't really run away to Canada or anything like that. I was not a political person. My parents were not political. I had no feelings, positive or negative, against war. My father was in World War II, but he never talked. And that's probably what kept me silent also for 40 years.
So Chuck, why was it a blessing for you?
Well, I saw what my father did working in a factory for 38 years. And I was being groomed to be just some kind of a steelworking engineer, electrical engineer in a factory. And I thought, oh no, I don't know if I can stand that.
So it was a way out.
It was a way out. I'd never been anywhere. I frankly had never done much. And so being drafted, and I didn't say this to anyone, but being drafted was a way out of Canton, Ohio. And I didn't really hate Canton. It's just I didn't see myself, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And this was a chance for me to leave gracefully, more or less, home and see the world. So, you know, hey, I get to get on a bus and go to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, okay, and go through basic training. And I didn't know anything. And so they tried to turn me into a soldier, and worked at that. It was a challenge for my drill sergeants. I, for some reason, wasn't prime quality, prime candidate for being a good soldier, but I mostly behaved myself in basic training, and then I went to advanced infantry training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and it was exactly the same as basic training, except there was a swamp, some swamp training in mud and things like that, which I enjoyed. I mean, I liked running around in the mud. So advanced infantry training was, everybody knew we were going to war. The war was going on. They were drafting people into the Marines. I got drafted, and I found it, I got to start seeing the United States because I went in for training from Kentucky to Louisiana. I'd never been to Louisiana. It was a good thing for me. That's how I saw it. After basic training, I had a month furlough. We go home, say goodbye to your family and all that. And I really had no clue what I was getting into. I didn't know anything about Vietnam, and I didn't know anything about Cambodia, and I frankly didn't know anything about war. Though I'd had training, it didn't seem, something was lacking. I, at that point, didn't know what it was, but I wasn't. I was patriotic. I needed to serve my country. We have to fight communists. There's something going on the other side of the world. So I was not super patriot, but I was not hostile towards the military and the flag and the symbols and being a soldier. I was kind of proud. At that point, you have this nice clothes to wear, and I'm home on furlough. But I was curious. At that time, I was a fundamentalist Christian and new Christian, and I was curious about how do soldiers behave in war. So I called up the elders of my church and I said, "Look, I want to talk. I'm going to Vietnam, and I just like your wisdom on what advice would you give me as a soldier going on the other side of the world?" Because I was a very pious, conservative Christian, and I wanted to know how do you behave as a soldier when you're, I suppose, carrying a gun or something? How do you do that? And so I went in there and asked that question. A piece of me was being a little antagonistic, I think, but I was serious, and these men who were 2 or 3 times my age kind of looked at me, and they didn't know what to say. No one had ever asked them that. They kind of looked away from me, and it was embarrassing. And I knew I'd asked the wrong question. I thought, geez, what do I do now? I'm going to war. My church, who had all the answers, no offense, were taken back. I was not raised in a pacifist position. I didn't know what a pacifist was. I was not raised as a conscientious objector. I never even heard of it. What would that be? So I guess, you fight for your country and this is God's will. And that's pretty much where I was at. But I just wanted to wrestle with that issue. So, all right, it looks like I have to figure this out for myself, is what I thought. And so I went on. After a month, people, we said our goodbyes. It was awkward. It was, people didn't know what to say. People were dying. One of my friends from high school had died. I found out later, 2 months earlier. The possibility of me dying just wasn't in my mind.
So how were your parents when you left?
I didn't know this till later. My dad said to my mom, I'm sure he's going to die. He cried, and my dad never showed any emotions, and he's a World War II vet. I was never said that. I was never told that by my mother till later. And I was naive. I was on a bus. We're seeing the world. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee in basic training, having a good time. Louisiana, we're, New Orleans. So there was an adventure to it. There was a discipline doing push-ups and saluting flags and all that. And I just tolerated that. But I was seeing the world for the first time, even the United States I had not seen. So, homeboy, going to war. I felt a little unprepared. I don't know how you'd prepare someone for war, but I asked some questions, but never got very good answers. So then I flew to Vietnam on an airplane. Never been on an airplane, so there's airline hostesses and sitting on these, and it was, whoa, and you're looking down out on an airplane and seeing the ocean for the first time. I was excited and afraid, a mix of emotions. I got to Bien Hoa in Vietnam, where the planes land, and Saigon, close to Saigon, and I remember walking out of the airplane, and the heat hit me, and I thought to myself, my God, I have to live in this heat for the next year. And at the same time, the heat hit me. They burn, what can I say and be polite? They burn the GI's shit. It was heat and burning shit was the two first experiences I got coming out of the airplane. And it smelled terrible, and it's hot. It's like opening the oven. And then I thought, okay, we'll get through this. So I got in to the receiving area where you're new, and I was told I'd be out in the field, whatever that meant, quickly. So I wasn't there long. Take showers, get clothes, and then they put me on a helicopter out to the jungle. And I met my company, and I was what was called an FNG. I didn't know what that meant until they said, well, you're a fucking new guy. Well, what's that mean? They says, well, we have to babysit you for a while because you're out in the jungle and you don't, you've never been shot at and you don't know anything. Well, I thought I have training, but no. This is the real world now. And so I'm a new guy, so they gave me a radio, PRC 25, I think, some number like that, a big heavy radio, and they put that on me and all the stuff I have to carry. And I was generally just a pack horse. So I carried this radio, and I was with my company for a while. We just started walking through the jungle. And I carried a radio and learned how to use the radio and call in helicopters that would kick out stuff for us that we needed, and carried it for my platoon sergeant, and walked behind him and just did what he told me for the first couple months. New soldier in the middle of the jungle. It's hot. We're eating sea rations. I found out that for the most of the time, at least what my company told me, is I'll be spending my entire time in the jungle, except to go on R&R to someplace, and I chose Tokyo. But that'll be about 6 months to 9 months later that I went to Tokyo. So here I am in the middle of the jungle and missing my family and carrying a radio through the jungle. So every day we walk, get up early in the morning and walk through the jungle and do soldier things. And I was learning the ropes and learning how to take care of myself and eating sea rations and learning what soldiers are and what soldiers do. Hot, my pack weighed about 80 pounds. It was heavy and annoying, and I had all this stuff I had to carry for everybody else, plus my stuff in the water. And so I'm learning about being a soldier and what a soldier does and what doesn't do. And I can remember walking through a village with my company, and I traded some of my food, sea rations. I got tired of that, for some of the bread in the village with the kids. And I gave some of my sea rations away, and one of my sergeants barked at me and said, "You can't do that. You can't fraternize with the Vietnamese. You can't feed these kids. They're going to kill you, blow you up, et cetera, et cetera." I said, "What? These are kids." And so I was punished. I had to, in the middle of the company, in the jungle, dig a really deep hole, and some sergeant, with a lot of hashes on his shirt, E7, E8, something, been in the military forever. He says, "Dig a hole." So I dug this really deep hole, and when I was done, he said, "Now fill it up." And something clicked in my brain, and I says, "Thank you, Sergeant." And he didn't appreciate that. And so I found myself, there was a threatening of a court-martial for feeding kids. What? And I know their rationale, but I wasn't fully in agreement with these are kids. They need to eat, and I thought I'd feed them something. No, you can't do that. Okay, so I needed to be more discreet with what I was doing. I was learning the ropes and making mistakes and being punished for them, out in the middle of the jungle. And that was my punishment. But the punishment, frankly, didn't work very well. It probably alienated me. It was the beginning of small steps in alienation of myself as a soldier. I remember I was walking with my company commander at that time, and I asked him, I says, "Why are we here? Why are we in Vietnam?" And the captain said to me, "I don't know why we're here." What? I didn't say too much because I was learning how to be around officers and not really get smart with them. But I thought to myself, if you don't know why we're here, he says, "Oh, Chuck, all I want you to do is not die. I don't want to die. I don't want my company to die." Okay, I understand that. but you didn't answer my question. Why, why are we here? I'd already heard the standard arguments, but he couldn't articulate it. And I says, what am I doing? In fact, what are we doing here in Vietnam? So, what? He was being honest with me. I know he could have gave me a canned answer. I was never really in basic or advanced infantry training given any kind of rationale that made any sense to me what we were doing there. I know we were on the Ho Chi Minh Trail between Cambodia and Indonesia, India, what country? Vietnam. And I know we were to stop resupply lines coming down from the north into South Vietnam. Okay, and it was on the Parrot's Beak, and we were to do patrols, and that was my job for the next year. I began thinking a lot of my work as a soldier and what I was doing. And I remember writing a letter to my mom that I needed to defend democracy. I needed to defend the world against communists. I needed to, what we were doing was the right thing and all that. And I have a letter that I sent to my mom and dad on this. But the longer I stayed there, the more disenfranchised, the more disillusioned, the critical I got of what I was doing. But I didn't really say much to my fellow soldiers about this. I was afraid to really have conversations about this, so I kept this to myself. I got malaria and dysentery, so I was in the hospital in Cu Chi. And after I got over malaria, I said, I'm going to go to a chaplain and I'm going to find out some answers on what are we doing here and the war and what does God think about war, that kind of stuff. Probably there's no answers, but I thought I'd go talk to a chaplain. So I went into the chaplain and I said, I'm not feeling comfortable being a soldier. I'm probably not the best person to be a soldier. Could I be a chaplain's assistant? No. I said, I'm having hesitations about what we're doing. We're shooting people, killing people, laying ambushes, things like that. And the chaplain became mad. He became angry at me and yelled at me. He says, you get the hell out of my office. People are dying, people are shooting themselves in the foot so they can get out, and there's no way I'm going to let you stand in my office, sit in my office, and have this discussion. In fact, I will personally send you to prison. What? I'm just trying to make sense of this. Get out. Okay, well, that didn't go well. So I thought, So I knew that the military was not warm to my thoughts, and I didn't know what to do with them. I couldn't talk to the people when I got back to my company in the bush. I was really confused. How do you think about these things? And I can't really talk to anyone. So at that point, I've been walking as a point man. So I'm a point man. I was kind of a crazy, naive John Wayne kind of guy. And so I'd volunteer for patrols, and they'd tell me to go down in a hole with a 45, and I would do that, and all this. But there was another side of me saying, this is insane. You don't need to be doing this. But this is all inside me now. And so I'm wrestling. I'm conflicted. I think I'm walking point. We'd set up an ambush along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and it was with a claymore mine, and so in the middle of the night, one of the claymores went off, and I ran up, and it was a Vietnamese soldier, and he was basically cut in half, you know. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm holding the guy, and he's dying, and I was this is the first time I'd really had that experience that close. Most of the time when you're shooting at people, you can't see them, you don't know what happens. This one was a man with his head on my legs, with the bottom half of his body cut off. And this is soldiers, and this is what soldiers do. And the man in the morning died. And we took his body and wrapped it up in a poncho and threw it over this side of a hill. And that's what you do with dead bodies, I guess. Well, I had all his stuff, because so I found myself doing strange things. I took my clothes off and I put his clothes on. I took his backpack and put it on. I took his food and I started eating his food. I took my M16, got rid of it, and carried his AK-47. And probably my fellow soldiers thought I was nuts. Well, I was. I'm still walking point. And not really conscious of what I was doing. And the more I let that sit in my head over the period of time, I finally came to a point I said the war is over for me, but my training is such that when you get into a firefight, it's a free fire zone. Your automatic reaction, there's no time to think. I'm a soldier. You start shooting, doing what you do. So I emptied my, I don't know whether I had an AK or a M16 at that time. I just emptied it of all the bullets. I didn't tell anybody. I said, I can't do this anymore. And I felt so liberated. But the other point of me said, geez, this is nuts. So here I am, a point man, walking point, lead man in the company, naked. I wasn't using any drugs or alcohol. This is just how I was coping with the war. The war is over for me. And I was also, nobody in my company knew that I was doing this. I was afraid that my fellow soldiers would kill me. I, in some senses, am now the enemy. And I look like the enemy. I wear the clothes. But it was not a conscious thing. It was just something I was doing. And so I'm walking point, and people are shooting at me, and I'm not shooting back. It's not easy to walk point with an empty gun, even when you're worked it out in your head. It's kind of nerve-wracking, in fact. Plus, I have to do this act that I have to look like a soldier. I'm not a soldier anymore. And I've tried to get out of the war. I tried to send me to jail. You can do that. I just don't want to. I don't want to be involved in killing. That's not working. So I stayed out there, and I volunteered for patrols where I'd get away from the company. If I die, it's one thing, and I'm not suicidal. I don't want to die. I just don't want any of my American soldiers to die, nor do I want any Vietnamese to die. I don't want anybody to die. The war is over. About that time, I got an R&R and I went to Tokyo and for a couple weeks. It was good for me to kind of decompress and kind of sort things out. Japan was wonderful. When I got back from Japan, I thought, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I'm no hero. I'm not crazy. I just don't. The war's over for me in my head, and so I says, well, if I could get in the rear and do something and get out of the jungle, that would help. No, you need to stay out there, and so we need you. And so I continued Walking Point for a while. Finally, I did. I think my last month, I got out and was in Quan Loy, helping resupply the helicopters with supplies, and that was a way for me to decompress. I just couldn't be participating in that kind of stuff. So I did make it through the war. I felt I betrayed my country. There was a lot of guilt. I just am not at a place where I wanted to do that anymore, and I didn't want anybody hurt. I wanted to break away from the war as best I could. So here I am as a kid, naive, saying I can't cope with the war anymore. So I came back from Vietnam. I got an early out. Came back from Vietnam and went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where I had the exciting job of picking up cigarette butts in the parking lot every day. And that didn't sit well with me. So I says, I can't do this. I don't even smoke. So that was kind of crazy. And so I thought, I'll get an early out and go to college. I was very angry, very bitter, very confused. I had malaria a couple times when I was in Colorado, Fort Carson. I liked Colorado. I got an early out. Then at the end of my military experience to go to Kent State University. And it was the year after they'd shot 4 students in the National Guard. And here I am now at Kent State University with a bunch of long-haired, left-wing, radical, crazy people. And that's where I kind of landed for a couple years. Trying to sort things out. I'm back now as a Vietnam veteran, and I feel very uncomfortable. I'm alienated from my friends, the girl I was to marry. No, everything fell apart. Suicidal, and it was interesting. My mother said to me, Chuck, you need to get away from that school. Go someplace else. Well, she had been working as a volunteer for a small college in Parkersburg, West Virginia. And it was a Bible school. So I went to this very conservative Bible school in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and just hid out for a couple of years, studying the Bible and kind of getting myself... a lot of the kids at this college were rebelling, and I was trying to calm my life. And so I was this crazy vet in the dorm who was kind of a parent figure and making people behave. But it was good for me to just get away from the craziness of a college campus where there's a lot of protesting going. I'm confused. And after that, after I left this small college, basically for about a long period of time, I got married, I had kids, I went and worked in Indonesia as a teacher, as a missionary. I didn't talk about Vietnam for a long, long, long time. So I'm now in therapy and work with the vets here in Eugene, and they've been good to me and kind of helping me sort out this crazy thing of what can I say? When I went from FNG to Fubar, which is my story from one insanity to the next. So yeah, that's my story.